So, hello everybody, and welcome to the first off-air podcast featuring myself, Joseph Parkhouse, the head of the JP on Comms channel, and with me today are two very good friends of mine and Stones Live commentary associates, Nigel Seeger. Hello, Nigel.
Hello.
And Sean Skur as well.
Tonto, hello.
So, if you don't know a little bit about me already, then of course do go and check out the channel as well. But if this is your first time watching, then my name is Joe, and as I said, I do run the JP on Comms YouTube channel. Also find me on Twitter at the same name. And a little bit about me is that I've been following the Stones now for about 6 or 7 years, and more recently, once I finished university, got quite heavily involved with the Stones through the commentary service that they do provide, which is Stones Live, so go and check them out as well. And that is where I met these two lovely gentlemen as well. So we'll start off with you, Nigel, since you're at the top of the screen with me, and tell us a little about yourself, Nigel, for the new viewers.
Well, I've been following the Stones since they came back to the Gallagher in 2012. So that's 10 years now. Used to work on a Saturday, so the games I went to were sort of a bit hit and miss. But since sort of like the Ryman Premier days, I've not been working Saturdays, so I've been able to get to more games. It's been an upward trajectory from there, and started doing Stones Live at the beginning of lockdown last year, and this will be my third season coming up now.
Excellent. So, very experienced head in terms of my own knowledge surrounding the Stones, at least, and I think the most stat-wise amongst the three of us is probably that man down below, isn't it, Nigel? So, Sean, give us a little introduction to yourself as well.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you once again for having us on your podcast, Mr. Parkhouse. Yes, I'm Sean Skur. You've probably heard me for the last few years on Stones Live, December 2018, 17, I believe. I can't remember. COVID does that to you, not just in here, but in terms of the fixtures.
It's all a blur.
It is a blur because we lost that 18 months, didn't we? But yes, I've been a season ticket holder since we got promoted to National League South the first time round, and I've been a faithful season ticket holder ever since, because things have allowed me to actually attend regularly from that point on. And yeah, like Nigel says, great to have the club back in the town centre for the last decade or so now. And yeah, I did a little bit of this years ago when I was at university back in the day. Commentated at a few fun stadiums for student radio. Obviously, the Walker's Bowl, as it was affectionately known at the time, was a particular highlight. But yes, great company this evening for our podcast, and obviously just to mention #Tonto. And that memory that we will always have, and I will always dine out on for the rest of my life. We will have better days for Maidstone, but none for me so far have been much better than that one. So, you know, great days we've had and great days ahead as well. However difficult some days might feel. So, yeah, I'm really excited for this season because let's see how we do against the bigger boys again.
Yeah, certainly going to be a step up, isn't it? Going back into the National League now after a few years out. And of course, being back in the National League is going to be putting us up against, of course, some potentially much tougher opposition. A few league clubs have joined us from League Two. Some of the bigger boys, some may consider as well in the National League. But some of the National League teams from last season are just as strong, if not stronger. So it's going to be really good to see how the Stones fare this season. Hopefully a pretty safe season in terms of our league position, but you never know, and that is what the excitement is all about, isn't it? So as I said, there is three of us here at the moment, but there is one more man behind the scenes, Connor, who has also commentated a few times on Stones Live with myself throughout the season. He was last at me with me at the Welling game. Did depart early, but you may recognise him once he does join us eventually. He's away with work at the moment, but we have also got his predictions for this video as well. So I'll be taking on the part of reading out my own and then reading out Connor's as we do kind of cycle round the three of us. So that is going to be sort of the structure we're going to have. We're all going to kind of share opinions and give our predictions ahead of this upcoming season. This podcast is going to be Maidstone centric, so if you're not a Maidstone fan, hopefully you can enjoy it as well. Maybe find out a little bit more about a few fans' expectations and opinions. But if not, then do check out the National League podcast we're going to be bringing out after this one, and hopefully you can get a little bit more from that as well. So let's kick things off and head into things with, I think, a little pre-season roundup. Shall we start with that, lads?
Yeah.
Okay, so heading on to the pre-season, of course, just finished, the last game being yesterday at the time of recording, the 30th of July versus Dulwich Hamley at home. The game did end 2-2. It's a bit of a scrappy affair, a couple of forced substitutions from the referee due to some on-the-field scraps within the game, but it's not too bad of a way to end the pre-season. Did end the pre-season undefeated, I do believe, a couple draws and the rest being wins. For me, the standout performer in pre-season was probably our new signing, Henry Woods. But I'd like to, of course, hear your thoughts as well. What's your kind of general consensus about pre-season? What were your expectations? How are you feeling now it's over? And then we'll, of course, get on to our standout performers.
Yeah, well, I think pre-season has probably gone as much as expected, really, with the fixtures that we had. We didn't really have any Football League teams apart from Leyton Orient, but that was kind of a split squad, wasn't it? So we didn't really get a true picture. But as you say, we was undefeated, and to me, it seems a bit stop-start, really. No one sort of stamped their place. You know what I mean? We've seen Sol, but he's only been on for 45 minutes in the Erith game, and he's been there and he's been involved in the warm-ups, but maybe that's just a different way that they're doing it now. They've got all these GPS trackers, and getting their minutes isn't necessarily about just playing a full 90-minute game and running round and round and round to get the fitness up. It's a lot more personal based. Obviously Jack Barham's coming back off of an injury, so his minutes are about to be managed. So, yeah, it's just difficult to tell, really, because there's a lot of information that comes from the club, which we all know likes to keep his cards close to his chest as regards to player fitness and availability and that. We don't sort of know what's going on, but in general, it's been okay. It's like the new players have integrated into the team, and you can kind of see what he's trying to do. So, it's in general, it's been quite good, I think.
What about you, Sean? What are you saying on the pre-season? Obviously, you've not been able to attend every game, as goes for myself and Nigel as well. But from what you have seen and, of course, heard from other people, what are your thoughts?
Obviously, the main one I got to attend was the Enfield match. And I know, obviously, not the highest of opposition in terms of their level. But the performance that was put in, the ball playing, certainly the first half hour of the match, and then a couple of pinging strikes the last 10 minutes of that match from Dom and Perry were, as I said, Dom Perignon. It was, some champagne football at times there. But again, you have to beat the opposition that's put in front of you, who you recruit to play against. One point that Nigel made there that I will pick up on, that I distinctly recall from last season, or last pre-season rather, would be not every friend that we had booked in last season went ahead either. And we had the exact same conversation this time last year. 2 or 3 COVID cancellations for certain friendlies that we were meant to have. Cancellations have come around because of heat and injuries this pre-season. But very similar stop-start feel, because you wanted those 8 games. We've only had the 6. We've not been able to see everybody we'd like. Probably a good half a dozen of the starting 11 that we would have had last season, and potentially getting their place for this season as well, haven't had nearly enough minutes. So the league start might well be a bit slower, but we had that last season, and we had quite a decent run to keep us in the top 7 for the majority of the start of last season, before the autumnal dip, as no one's ever referred to it as until then, potentially. And things turned out all right last season from memory. So yeah, it's purely a minutes based thing. Not everybody's got enough minutes. Not all the performances have been great. There have been some great moments in pre-season, but the nub of things is more signings is definitely something Hakan would want. He's got his fingers in some pies and trialists that have been in a lot of the matches. And yeah, it's going to be very interesting this next week what announcements the club makes. Squad number list. I presume most of what's already on the website is going to be as it is. And yeah, looking forward to Altrincham in a few days' time and seeing how we get on there.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much echo both of your thoughts there. As I said before, my standout performer was one of the new signings, but that's not to say that the players we did have last season haven't excelled. For me, Sam Corn, Regan Booty, and actually Yusuf Mersin has been someone that's really impressed me last season, or this season, this pre-season. Sorry. Of course, we didn't see him feature too much in the league last season. Only really when Tom Hadler saw a few games out with suspension, but someone for me who's really impressed, and both the goalkeepers have actually had quite a equal share of the minutes so far, both pretty much getting a half each in every game. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out on. Another headache there for Hakan going into pre-season. But when it comes to some of the outfielders and the new signings, as I said, Henry Woods has been my standout player in terms of expectation, I think, from this pre-season. But that's not to say that, of course, Solwandro Smith, in the short time we see of him, really impressed me as well. We also have Hadi Gandor, who's come back on a permanent deal now, been fantastic for us in every appearance he's made so far, and picked up a couple of goals along the way as well. So continuing his form from the end of last season. And then James Alabi as well, who's also featured and scored. Unfortunately, did miss that penalty against Dulwich yesterday, but it's going to come. It's not exactly an important time, crucial time to score a penalty. So hopefully, if the time does come during the season, he's able to dispatch. And then I don't think I'm leaving anyone else out besides Jack Cooley. He's someone who I think personally is just taking a little bit longer to settle in. Hopefully, once the season does pick up and we see Joel Ol featuring more often as well, hopefully that's something that we might be able to see in terms of a partnership there. But it's going to take a lot of communication, and we're seeing a lot of chopping and changing at the moment. So in terms of pre-season for you, Nigel, we'll go back to you. Obviously, I've shown my kind of standouts in the team so far, but what about you? Is there anyone that's particularly impressed you this pre-season?
Yeah, similar to you, really. I mean, I didn't really know what you look at players, don't you? We played against Sol last year, and we know what he brings to the table. And as you said in one of your videos, his assist level was very good last year in the national self. So he's kind of made that step up with us, really, hasn't he? But one player that we didn't really know a lot about, and I don't think it was really a target of Hakan's at the beginning of pre-season, to what he said in the press, is Henry Woods. I mean, he's a local lad. I mean, and we've always been sort of harping on about that, haven't we? Getting local lads in, it's all right getting these players in from afar, but do they actually know about the club? Do they actually understand what it is to play for Maidstone? And he's actually come out in the press this week in the KM article and said, that he's very impressed with Maidstone, and he even said in his introduction interview that he was aware of what Maidstone was about, living in the town before. So I think he's come in and he's really integrated in with the team really well. And to me, he looks like he's one of those players that looks like he's been here forever. You know what I mean? He seems to be. I mean, I was queuing the last pre-season game I went to. I think it was the Enfield game, and he walked in through the river. And as he come in, he was chatting to all the fans and how you doing and how long you've been supporting Maidstone and all this kind of thing. So he's got that sort of rapport with the fans, which Hakan obviously likes. So I think and his performances on the pitch, I think as well, he's a different player to what Michael Phillips is. I don't think he's really a direct replacement for Michael Phillips, but it's obviously then comparisons going to be made because Michael Phillips was a player that went out and he's come in. So but I just think he brings different skill sets to the team. So he looks composed on the ball, and he can pick a pass, and he's even scored a goal in pre-season as well. So I think he, for me, has been the one out of all the players. He's the one that sort of stood out, really.
Yeah, he does seem like he's going to be the one who kind of features the most in this team at the moment, doesn't it? He seems like, that first team slot is kind of open and waiting for someone to fill it, and he does seem to be the new signing that is going to slot straight into the first team. What about you, Sean? Obviously, as I mentioned, you've been to a couple of pre-season games, I think, now, so you might have a little understanding, of course, speaking to a few people as well with some of the links you do have around the club. So what are your thoughts on the pre-season?
Indeed. Obviously, Sol with that 45 minutes against Enfield was great. Alabi has been an unexpected pleasure to watch. Nimble footwork for such a broad lad. Very good feet. Some lovely adept finishes he's had. Shame about the penalty the other day, but we've not been blessed with emphatic penalty takers over the years anyway, so I don't think he's going to make too much difference. Woods, again, that goal against Enfield was very simple, and his connecting play throughout the midfield has helped the likes of Corn, Booty, Dom go on and run a little bit. And there's a lot of interchange in that midfield. There's no one that you would say, oh, that's the defensive midfielder that starts up at the J. Davidson Stadium in a few days' time. It's very open and up for grabs in the midfield. It's the defence that's probably the issue, purely based on numbers. The midfield is packed. It's got lots of quality. Up front, we might be one short, depending on what we think of Luke's situation. And the thing with Cooley, and like I said a minute ago, it's a minutes game because he barely played last season. But from the highlights we have seen of his performances the last 18 to 24 months, he is a brick house as well as Ellel. He's very much in that mould. So once he's got those minutes on board, like Ellel did, we were fortunate when George Elokobi went out during that autumn dip last season, is because Ellel came in from injury straight away and George Fowler turned up. We've been discussing off air before and the past few days. The loan market will be very, very interesting this season to see who we can pick up, because George Fowler just slotted in perfectly last season, and that run that we had was just phenomenal. And a lot of it was to do with just the composure at the back. You've seen it with the Lionesses tonight. If you've got the composure at the back and you can play the ball out, the system that Hakan likes and that we all like and that we're not changing this season by the looks of things, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, whoever you're playing against, then we will find the players to fit the system rather than the system to fit the players. And I think that's what will happen. There might be certain people we've been interested in, we've not been able to get them for whatever reasons, whether they're too expensive, they're too this, they're too that. Hakan will make it work, and he will bring in the right players to do the right job.
Yep, I do agree with that as well, Sean. And of course, on to Connor's thoughts about the pre-season now. So Connor did have a little chat with him a couple of days ago, and he did echo a lot of the sentiments that we've kind of mentioned already. He was very, very impressed with a lot of the regulars from last season as well. He's a big fan of our midfielders, Regan Booty and Sam Corn. He was also a very, very big fan of Michael Phillips. However, he was quite concerned when he did leave, and maybe the replacement we were looking at might be difficult to come by. However, I've been speaking to him about Henry Woods, and from what he's been seeing and saying, to me at least, he seems more than happy with the signing of Henry Woods. He enjoys the different dynamic that he is going to bring to this midfield, and I think we can all agree on that. He does have a little bit more to his game than Michael Phillips. I think Phillips was a little bit more defensively astute, but when it comes to his all-round performance, I think Woods could provide a little bit more in that midfield for us. Connor also said that he was very happy with Gandor's performances, and he does think he's going to be a fantastic player for us next season, which of course we did speak about, and we'll get onto a little bit more as well when we do our individual award predictions for the season. I know that at least a couple of us may be mentioning Hadi Gandor in one or two categories, so hopefully that name does come up yet again. But overall, looking ahead to the Ilchin game for Connor, he did also mention that hopefully if fit, we would see pretty much the team we've been seeing throughout pre-season, with Jack Barham chucked in there if he does make it back. So we will quickly now just run on to our season predictions, and I think the best place to start off is going to be where we're going to finish in the league. So I'll kick things off, And just to chuck it out there, no beating around the bush, I think we're going to finish 16th this season. I've kind of gone in the middle of the road of a lot of fans' predictions. There's a lot of fans that think we might be coming down the bottom. A lot of them think we might be pushing that kind of playoff spot. So I've kind of gone straight down the mixer. Justification for that is I think we've had quite a good window in terms of what we've actually managed to retain. A lot of people often look at incomings as a sign of a good window, but I think departures is also quite a big sign. We haven't lost anybody besides Michael Phillips really of note in terms of first team appearances last season, I don't believe. So maintaining a significant portion of a pretty confident title winning squad is of course going to be very good going into next season. And I think the incomings we've seen have bolstered some of the weaker areas of the team as well. I do think we're going to need to see a couple more signings. As Sean, I think you mentioned earlier, in the defence, we've got that numbers that really do need to be made up. We're seeing, Rory Deacon, who is primarily played as a right winger, often featuring as our backup right back, which I'm not too keen on, but he did perform well there last season. So hopefully a few more incomings will help us to cement that kind of 16th place prediction that I've got for us at the moment. But I don't think there's any reason why we can't do that. I don't think there's any reason why we can't kick on a little bit more than that. And what about you boys? What are you saying at the moment?
Well, I'm pretty much the same as you, really. I've gone for 15th. Just on the same basis, really. I mean, we've kept 80% of our squad. We've only really lost Alfie Pavey and Michael Phillips. And Alfie Pavey wasn't really featured much last year. I've just, I've seen some predictions from the other fan sites, and pretty much everybody's got their own opinion. But if you look at our side and you compare it to Dorking, which is the only comparison that we've really got between teams from last season, they've done pretty much the same, and they've added players again from the level below. So, on that basis, you would think that we would finish above them again. And like we've said previously, I don't think, just knowing that the owners, we haven't gone through all this effort to get up, only just to go down for Wimpole again like we did last time. I know that was through the sort of like three managerial changes during the season, but we seem to have a lot more settled now. And Hack has proved himself in the loan market. And I think, that's going to, like we've said before, that's going to be a big thing. And for all the teams as well, but he pretty much most of the signings that he's had, even before we came up last year, in the season that was stopped, he's had players that come in and they've all gone on to better things. Like players like Charlie Seaman and Max Waters, and even Jack Curry, who scored the second goal for Wimbledon yesterday. We originally got him in on loan from Wimbledon, although we never paid for the Stones. Hakan did get him in. He's got those contacts to get those players in. So I think that's going to be good. And I also think that the bench is going to come into it. I mean, we've got people like Dominic Odesanya coming in off the bench. He's never let us down, has he? If he does start off the bench. So, we've got that strength in depth this year that I didn't think we did have last time when we came up. So you've got those players that can come off the bench and change the game and maybe rescue a point or go on and get that winner. And I think from what Sean was saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And one of the things that he is going to have is hard work. I mean, he talked there about the Tonto moment with Joel Powell. That was right at the end, literally, right at the end of the game, and that just going to the end. And I think that's going to get us a good 8-10 points this year. If you can go to the end, if you can keep in games, and that work ethic will come in. And I think that's something that we'll look to carry on and go up that extra level as well. So that's basically why I go for 15th, really. It's just sort of an establishing season to hopefully then kick on again next year and get that little bit more quality in. But, it's just you've got to see how it goes, haven't you? But from the signings that everyone's made around the league, that sort of like seems to be the ballpark figure. So that's why I've gone for 15th.
I'd pretty much echo everything there. Of course, you mentioned the loan signings and Hakan's contacts. Of course, he's a very well connected person in terms of his managerial career, and of course, people he knows from his playing career. And we have seen the team, especially last season, benefit very, very well from loan signings. We did have a chat just before we went live, and George Fowler was brought up, someone who essentially did save our season in a few aspects in terms of the defensive depth that we had at the time, the way he managed to just kind of hit the ground running, that partnership that he formed with Joe Alol, that really carried us through the whole season. I think, a couple more players like that, and the strength and depth that we do have, Christy Patterson off the bench as well, fantastic player, someone who can really cause trouble for a lot of teams. I do remember the Concord game last season that I commentated. We were really, really struggling in that game. Christy Patterson come on and we won 5-1. It wasn't even close after he came on. And it's just those options that we have, and now the depth that we've managed to kind of acquire through some of the signings, I think is some very good points that you've made there, Nigel. So what about you, Sean? What do you think we're going to be up to in this coming season?
Well, I'm slightly more pessimistic than you gents, but I've still got us staying up, which is what we all want at the end of the day. I think any Maidstone fan worth their knowledge would be content with, acclimatising, just remembering what the struggle was like. Because bear in mind, this is the first time in 4 years that we're actually going to play a 46-match season as well. So it's going to go on longer than anybody has had since pre-COVID days. So let's say 3 or 4 years ago. I've got us as finishing 18th. And the reason for that is just looking at the run of fixtures. It's hoping that we've got enough points on the board before April comes around, because I think most of the teams we play in April are going to be title contending, which I know we'll come on to in the other podcast. But I think, you look at that run, it's Boreham Wood at home, Southend away, Barnet at home, Halifax away, Notts County home, Chesterfield away. Those last three, especially, you're thinking they're all playoff contenders. And again, you get it season in, season out. You want, if you are looking to stay up, you need to have things done by a certain time. You want to just be 18 or 19 points clear of the drop zone, which I've got to say, mathematically last season, even with Dover aside, I think that was probably possible for a lot of sides, because I think that bottom three, as it was last season in the National League, was done from about mid-January, in all honesty. I think there was a couple of moments where one of the other southwest sides could have, or southeast sides as well over Kings Lynn, could have changed things up. But the other worry for me is the symmetry of when we played Solihull Moors away, and we were on BT Sport and we got an absolute hammering. And it was an absolutely horrific day. And that match was pretty much done by about half time already. And we've got them roughly the same sort of time, the start of March. And you're hoping, I know I said you want to be safe by April. You want to be in a position where you're building form after Christmas. You've still got form, and you're able then to make sure that you're going to be going to places like Solihull, then Wealdstone on the Tuesday afterwards, and making sure that you're grinding out these results. So the system won't change very much, as I've mentioned before when I've spoken to Hakan in pre-season, but there will be opportunities for us to put 5, 6, 7 at the back and play some potentially stultifying, nullifying football. But if it stops you from losing 8-0, and those 7 or 8 goals that you stop going in are the reason you stay up at the end of the season, squeaky bum time, and you finish 20th, fine. Then you need to do that in certain occasions. But the way the system works, the way we press from out from the back and use the full backs to support the forwards, we're hoping that we don't need to convey that system too often. But for my mind, my money, it's not just the league finish that's important, because as Nigel quite rightly said, we need to build going into next season as well. And I've said it on every single thing I have done for Stones Live, for JP on comms, etc., etc. As soon as we get an FA Cup third round match, as soon as we get £500,000, £1 million in the coffer, that third stand gets built, everything falls into place then, and Football League football is a lot more likely once we've had that third round journey. You've seen it with Lincoln, you've seen it with Sutton, you've seen it with Boreham Wood, dare I say. I mean, they're still stuck where they are, and I'm sure they will get out at some point. Forest Green Rovers, another club that have come out recently. So many sides that have just had these brief glimmers in the FA Cup, and you'll go, did they get to the third round? And you're going to check through every non-league club from the last 20 odd years that's come through, has had some sort of cup run. in the year or two before they've then gone up. They need that infrastructure investment. And considering we didn't have a stadium 10 years ago, as we mentioned earlier, those are the key things that the club needs to get. Nigel said it earlier. They want to invest. They don't want to go down with a whimper again. But at the same time, we can't also do what we did in that season when we went down and we used at least 60 players. We did use in the end just around about 40, I think it was, last season. But again, a lot of the loan signings we made, like your Chukukwa, your Betema, some of those people that get 10, 15 minutes. You mentioned the Wimbledon chap who scored yesterday from the season before, Nigel. Not everything that gets brought in is going to work. And yes, you may need to bring in a lot more than you'd like. You know, you're going to throw enough stuff, some of it's going to stick. And here's hoping that the loan market does work in our favour like it did with George and others last season. And that's why I think we'll have a more complete picture of what our squad will be like. I'd probably say come the end of September, I still think there'd be at least 3 or 4 more signings. So it could be 1 or 2 that we've got signed up now who could also potentially leave in that time. I have no knowledge, I have no names, I have no insider stuff, but it's just the way it is. I mean, Jake Gallagher, for example, last season, just immediately just disappeared.
Yeah.
So these things can and will inevitably happen. But so far, the last 12, 18 months, they've generally gone in the right ballpark and direction for Maidstone. And it's not just Hakan who's helping making those decisions. It's, of course, Terry Harris as well. So whenever I credit Hakan and his 80-odd perfect substitutions from last season, I also credit Terry Harris for those as well, because there's a pair of very wily brains between them that get the results on the pitch out of those players. So it's 18th for me.
Well, to kind of support what you're saying there, actually, we've got Connor's predictions as well. I did have a little chat with him, of course, as I mentioned, and I'll continue to rattle off some of his thoughts. So when he joins us next time, he's kind of up on the par with the rest of us when it comes to contributions to the podcast. But I did speak to him, and he kind of said a little bit more about the loans and how he's thinking they might affect our season. He said he's kind of given a ballpark rather than a position. He's given me 12th to 18th, so pretty much encompassing all of us. He said that worst case scenario for him, hopefully, will be around that 18th, 19th mark, but he thinks that with signings throughout the season and being able to kind of kick on with the success we've seen in the past with players coming in throughout the season, then hopefully we can kind of push up the table a little bit more towards that more mid-table rather than the lower mid. So yeah, I think everybody's kind of got a pretty similar opinion here. Everybody's within a couple of positions of each other. And I think really if you do kind of break it down and look at it rather than kind of just go, we're going to rush for the playoffs, we're going to go straight down, finish rock bottom. You know, if you do kind of take a balanced look at everything, you kind of are going to end up with that more safe position, you know, slightly above the really, really relegation dogfight teams in that kind of 20th, 21st position. And then, you know, hopefully Maidstone will be sitting in a little while and above that. But on the infrastructure you did mention there as well, that's quite a big thing that obviously is going to have to take place over the next few years. And Connor actually did, in a way, mention that as well. He did talk about how he thinks that not finishing too high up the table actually could benefit Maidstone this season. You know, if we do kind of have a one-off, kind of take the league by storm this season and, you know, push towards that kind of upper mid-table spot, then we may be losing quite a few players who are going to really contribute to Maidstone's future in these next couple of years. And I really did agree with that. Obviously, we've got some very important players who we are going to be hoping to keep as part of the project in the next few years. And being able to kind of steadily make our way up rather than excel and have them all stolen away from us quite early on is going to allow us to have that more, you know, longevity in terms of success rather than this kind of get in and immediate success. So I think over time we'll see it come, but I think, you know, a reserved approach for now is going to be quite a good thing. So on to now some of the more individual predictions for the season. So we've just given our Maidstone United general team predictions for the season, our league positions. Just to rattle them all back off, I've gone with 16th, Nigel's gone with 15th, Sean's gone with 18th, and Connor is floating around the pack. Anywhere in that lower to mid-table is kind of what he's aiming for. So we're sticking at 15th with Nigel for now. But on to some of the individual predictions for the season. We're going to take a little look at our Player of the Year prediction, our top scorer of the year for the Stones, at least. We'll get on to the National League in the next podcast, and as well our surprise package of the season. So I'll rattle off a couple of mine first, and then we'll move on to the rest of the boys. So for me, personally, I think our Player of the Year is going to be Sam Corn. Mr. Consistent for me. He missed very, very few games last season. Someone who really stood out in quite a large portion of our games. I think the only game that he was actually even not at full fitness for last season was the Dorking game that we lost away 1-0, and he still played nearly the full game whilst violently ill before the match. And that's the kind of player you get with Sam Corn, someone who's up for every game, and he puts in the performances as well as the attitude to get fit for a game. So for me, he's going to stand out for us in the middle of the park next season. That's not to say other people won't, but he is going to be my pick. Top scorer for the season is something I'm still undecided on, so I'm going to go with it off the cuff at the moment, but I'm going to go with Hadi Gandor. For me, just looks, it's definitely a kind of left field sort of pick, I think, there. What are you saying, boys, with that one?
Yeah, it's a good shout, isn't it? I mean, he's a striker, and like you say, he does a good pre-season. It's just difficult to know, isn't it? I mean, for me, I've gone for Jack Barham as top scorer. I mean, I know it's pretty much a safe bet, but for me, he just epitomises the whole way that we play, that high press. And let's not forget that he didn't score his first league goal for the club until December last year against Dartford. And then obviously he went on to get a hat-trick that game. But 3 hat-tricks in a season, no Stones player's ever done that, I don't think, in the modern times anyway. And I think someone did a stats table, and his goals per minutes was better than any other player in the National South last year. That's above Alfie Rutherford and Ryan Seeger and all these players that are lauded, and rightly so for their goals. But goals per minute on the pitch, Jack Barham was right up there. So I just think he epitomises that sort of high press that he played. I mean, the best game I think I saw was the game we commentated on that home Ebbsfleet game with Sean. He didn't score that game, but his work rate that night, for a team that likes to play out from the back, he was just disrupting everything that they did. And he did actually get a physical assist, but his work rate sort of let players like Sam Corn and George Fowler on the back post. He scored that goal that came in, just Barham's tenacity up front there, and his all-round performance. So for me, I mean, I think if he stays fit and he has a full season, I think you can't look past Barham for top scorer.
Yeah, I was also kind of debating between Barham and Gandor. My only thinking behind it was I'm quite confident that we'll be able to keep Gandor for a whole season, and I'm quite confident that Gandor will be able to stay fit for a whole season. So that is kind of the reason I've gone for it.
Please stay, Jack.
Yes, please stay. Don't go. This is not me saying that I want you to leave or anything. A full season of Jack Barham fit, it's very, very hard to contest that he wouldn't be top scorer for the club. But, he's a young player with big aspirations. There's no guarantees, especially in the non-league football. So for me, Gandor is just a bit of a left field kind of pick out there. And then my surprise package of the season, again, someone I was quite torn on. But for me, I'm going to go with Henry Woods. Maybe debatably a surprise. I mean, he has got a year National League under his belt with Dover last season, but the team was that poor that I think the expectation of him coming in, especially from big local rivals Gillingham, a lot of people may not expect too much from him. He's also a very young player, so he's got, if he is going to be dropped into this first team, he's going to have a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and I think he is going to prove to be quite a good asset. So for me, surprise package of the season, Henry Woods. But that's mine wrapped up. So Nigel, what are you on about? You've already given us Jack Barham as your top scorer in your justification, but what about the rest of them?
Well, I've gone for player of the season as Henry Woods. Mm-hmm. Probably for the same reasons that you said, really. I think he's I mean, like if you say Sam Corn's going to be the your basic midfield, you're going to play every game. But Henry Woods, to me, is that kind of a player that he doesn't do anything elaborate, but he's one of those players. If he's not in the side, you notice him.
100%.
You know, I think he's just the perfect foil for Sam Corn and Regan Booty. If they all stay fit, I think he adds that something. He just does that calmness. He gets us up the pitch. You know, hopefully with him and Sam Corn in there, sort of at the base of that three, Regan Booty can be further up the pitch and do some of the more passes through balls and over the top balls that we've been accustomed to. And I just think he's sort of like the glue that keeps the team together. So I think the midfield is going to be, as much as to be said, like obviously you need your goal scorers to score your goals, you need your defenders to keep the ball out of the net. It's that engine room in midfield. And I think, the experience in there, I mean, he's only young, but he's had a whole season, he was at the bottom of the league with Dover, but he's played a full season. And, if he learns from that and he kicks on with a team that's pushing higher up the table, I think, and obviously with him being a Maidstone boy as well, that obviously goes. I know he's an ex-Jules, and we won't mention that, but he's still local. Sorry, he still lives in the town. So he's somebody that the fans can sort of associate with. So I think that for that reason, that's why I've picked him as player of the season. And the prize package, somebody that we've mentioned is Sol Wanju-Smith. I think he's got the numbers at the National League South level, but he's a little bit of unknown quantity, and he's that kind of player that when he gets the ball, you're on the edge of your seat. He's got that speed to go past somebody. He can cut inside. He can go beat a player, and then the goal that he scored off of at Enfield, off the back of the Alabi run, it's just like. I think he's going to be all round the pitch sort of thing. And if he's again, it's all about fitness. And if a player stays fit and if they have a full season, but I think he can be. The fact that I think as well that he's moved to the town, I like that. He's a Bristol lad. He's from the West Country there, but he's moved to the town. He's on a 2-year contract, so he's taking it seriously. I just think he can be the one that the exciting player that we've got. Really, so that's why I think he's going to be the surprise package.
Yeah, and I think again, all of those you've justified really well. I think many people amongst the fan base are going to share those opinions as well. Sol, from what we've seen from him last season, especially in games against us, as well as throughout the season, and the short feature he's had in this pre-season, looks a fantastic player. Obviously, I've picked Henry Woods as my surprise package. You picked him as player of the year, so again. Similar in terms of justification there. And good points there made by Nigel. And of course, as I did mention, both echoed by myself and I'm sure many of the fans within the Maidstone fan base. So on to Sean Skur now. What have you got for us, Sean?
Well, I've got the player of the season for us, which will tell you about my pessimistic streak, is Tom Hadler. Because we've had it before with the likes of Lee Worgan being cult hero and getting us a lot of points throughout the season by making some tremendous saves. And I believe Hadler will be in a similar position. I know we've had discussions about who's going to be number one at the back. There did seem to be potentially some communication issues against Dulwich that were caused potentially at the back by one or two of the players. For my money, I still think Hadler is the number one from last season. The stats bear that out in terms of many journalists we've discussed this with have said that Hadler was head and shoulders above other keepers who made it into other League South teams. That was ridiculous, quite frankly. And as good as it is to have Merson as that competition there, I still feel that Hadler will still play the majority of the matches and he will save us a lot of points. He will keep us in a lot of games. He did that last season as well, was fairly unheralded at times because a lot of the time it didn't seem to get back to him. The defence did its job. We hardly conceded any goals. And again, I'm the first one to hold my hands up. Hadler had those 2 or 3 games where the exact same goals seemed to creep in and he was dropped for a little bit. We had Sanford incidents. We had Merson come in as well and gave him that competition. once Hadler came back in after the autumn dip, he made the position his own for most of the rest of the season. And I feel like he's got that for this season as well. And that's why I think he'd be our player of the season, purely on a pessimistic front, which I know isn't happy times for us. And I apologise for that, but I'm trying to be realistic in that front. Top scorer, yes, Jack Barham, of course, if he's fully fit for an entire season. And if he gets his scoring boots on early enough, as you say, Nigel, you both mentioned Sam Corn's performances in the Ebbsfleet matches, primarily where he got the bulk of his goals last season. I think he was second with Booty for appearances, obviously miles behind Gavin Hoyt at right back, another unheralded player, which we have many of. But I certainly remember that game, Nigel. We commentated on home to Ebbsfleet, and just that goal that I anticipated, Corn smashing through Deacon, the ball cut in from possibly Barham, I think, from memory, and Deacon leaving it and Corn smashing it into the corner, and just that interplay between all those front six, as we've seen so much last season. So being a top goal scorer, you've got to be good at getting some assists as well. Barham did that last season for us, and I think he'll be there or thereabouts for us this season. You mentioned a left field choice, Hady Gandor being a left-sided forward for us as well now, and having a full season with us, because again, got to remember, we said about George Fowler being a great loan signing. Hady Gandor as well scored two of the most crucial goals for Maidstone last season to get some rather important results to seal certain deals. Barham will edge that if he stays with us and he's fully fit the entire season. Lord willing, that is what's going to happen. Because then, of course, if you've got them two both competing for that number 9 spot, Hady might well play a bit more on the left. Deacon might be a bit more defensively positioned, depending on what happens with Hoyt as well. So then you've got Sol Wanjo Smith and Hady Gandor supporting Barham. If we're lucky to have all those three up front, there's so many different combinations that Hakan's got. I'm sure, I was about to say, I'm sure he's got an 11 in mind. I know he's got his system in mind. I think he's probably only got about half the players, if that, ready for Altrincham in his 11. Because obviously we discussed the injuries we had with Dulwich Hamlet yesterday, of course. But for me, if Barham stays, my 18th stays fit, that 18th would dramatically improve, and it would be similar to Connor's 12th to 18th. And I think the 18th part for Connor is more if Barham isn't fully available, put it that way, and if he is, then the 12th. The surprise package for me, I would say Christy Patterson. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to get a bit more consistency from him this season. Practicing some of the finishing. I apologise for saying that, Christy, but you yourself, are your own worst critic and also your biggest supporter as well. And I always love watching you. We've all eulogised about you in this video and previous commentaries as well. Great memories, Nigel, from the opening game of last season against Hemel, where he come on and sealed it. He should see the match out, and great to have everybody back in a full stadium again after so long. So you mentioned the Concord away game as well. There, come on, start the second half, end of the first half, and he just electric. Just if you get that performance from him every other game rather than every fourth or fifth game. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, he is an impact player. You've got someone like Sol who started, who would be my signing of the season so far with the limited new faces that we've got in. But in terms of being a surprise, I think any increase of consistency from Christy Patterson is going to be a real boon for this team. And that, again, would see us be higher than the 18th I've predicted. So if I'm going to be surprised, it is going to be by Christy Patterson in a sense. But we all know he's got it in his locker because he's so damn talented. And if he can be more consistent, it would be a nice surprise, but we know he's got it in him.
Yeah, no, I actually very much agree with that. He's someone who certainly could be an option for one of the contenders of the player of the season in terms of impact he could have on the team. Definitely someone who's got it in his locker to perform very well in the National League, can exploit space very, very much so. And as you said, he is quite a harsh critic of himself and his ability at times. So I'm sure, now he's going to be a bit more comfortable with the squad. He's going to know the role that he's playing every week. That may allow him to kind of focus just a little bit more on some of the finer details of his game, which may see him excel within the team. On to Connor's predictions, and he has gone the same as me, Sam Corn, as his Player of the Year. He kind of said the similar things to me as his justifications for that. Someone who's going to be playing pretty much every week, one of the better players you've got in that position, and someone who, again, does pick up the odd goal. I think our third highest goal scorer last season, with 8 or 9. I'll let you two debate that, as I know that was a contest last season, but he's gone, again, I think even more left field with his top scorer prediction than what I did. So I said Harry Gandor. You two have said Jack Barham, and he's gone with James Alabi, the new lad in from Bromley. His justification for that was, although he's not necessarily started too many games throughout his career up to this point, he's someone who he thinks we're going to see a lot more of next season compared to some of his previous clubs. And should he get more games within the squad, then surely the goals will come. So he did predict him to get between 10 and 15 goals next season, which I think, given the game times, definitely a justified prediction there. And then his surprise package was, of course, Sol Wanjo-Smith. I think the Enfield game kind of cemented that prediction for him. He just looked fantastic, didn't he, in that game? So hopefully we can see that from Sol ahead of the next season. So just before we wrap things up, let's have a little chat about the upcoming season and the first game we're going to be seeing, of course, up in Altrincham next week, Saturday the 6th of August. I do believe all of us are going to be there, Connor as well. So let's have a little chat about that and what we're expecting to see from that game. Personally, best case scenario for me is going to be an incredibly scrappy win, but realistically quite a well fought draw. I'm hoping to see there, just as long as we're putting up a contest, kind of trying to impose ourselves on the game rather than just kind of accepting any sort of battering. I think most fans will be happy with that. All we want to see is some fight going into the new season. We do understand that sometimes things take time. Of course, we had a couple pre-season games cancelled, so we might not be exactly where we need to be given the season start, but hopefully within the next few weeks we will be up there fighting for the position that we feel is justified in this league. So yeah, for me, maybe a 1-1 draw, potentially a very tight loss, but you never know. Trying to keep my positivity on at the moment. So what about you, Nigel? What are you expecting from Altrincham next week?
Well, I'm thinking 1-1 personally. I mean, they got a very good home record last year. They've gone full time this year from part time. We know exactly how that is. You do lose some of the better players that are part time, and they are in a very condensed sort of catchment area up south of Manchester there. So they are looking at players from a bigger pool, but they seem to have made that transition quite well. They've obviously got the same manager in that they've had, so he's been with them from when they came up from the National Premier, I think it was, where they was from. So similar to us, really, under Jay, they've had 2 promotions to get to this level. So, he knows his system, he knows the way that he plays, so he would have got players in to play that system. Yeah, and just really, the last 3 seasons we've been in the National League, we always had a 1-1 draw. I think we had a 1-1 draw at home to York the first season, and we had Maidenhead the second season, and Hartlepool in our final season. So, I think really that's what you've got to look for the opening game of the season. And like you say, be competitive. Just don't go up there in awe. I don't think we will. I think Hack's going to have them working hard. They know the system. You've got the players that play that system. He's going to pick players that he thinks are going to perform to a system. I know we've, I don't know, some of you follow the scout, but he was up at Altrincham yesterday watching their game, and that was only a pre-season game, but they've obviously done their research, so they sort of know what sort of system they play. So, yeah, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to put in a decent performance, and that buzz, that momentum that we had at the end of last season will carry on, and we will get a result.
Yeah, what about you, Sean? I think you're probably going to echo something quite similar to the both of us, but we never know. Maybe a 4-0 prediction either way from you.
I think, I know last season was fairly standard for Altrincham. They've had a few good seasons now, been on the upward trajectory. Similar to us, haven't been in National League for a little bit of time now. Not really set the world alight, but then sort of one of those teams that will just sit in that middle third of the division and not really seem to threaten anyone. I mean, in recent days, they've re-signed Chris Clark from League One side Fleetwood Town. So you can already see that, although we only played a couple of games for them last season, you can see that they're trying to continue on the group that they had from last season that got them the consistency at home. And again, it's reaching out to a League One side, like we did with Charlton with a couple of their kids. Same for Altrincham, trying to get transfers in from there. One standout player for me that I've always enjoyed watching over the years for Halifax and Fylde, where he had his brief season there, would be Matty Costello. So I know you've got your Halifax buddy Joe,
Yes.
and Matt Costello is a name that draws a few breaths from people because they know of his experience and the skill that he has. 9 goals for them last season, Altrincham, and certainly his early years for Halifax, he was an incredibly good player and one of those poster boys for the early years when BT Sport acquired the rights to the National League. I still think we can sneak something early on, and an away win at Altrincham would be one of those that I think would really, hit the ground running, set the world alight for us, and say, look, we are back here and we are here to stay. The only issue is, again, from Dulwich from Saturday, how many players have we got available of the 11 that we would all like to see? Because it's a good 3 or 4 that came off with knocks, etc., didn't they?
Yeah,
so
was in there as well, which of course, considering our depth at the moment, and in that defensive area, is going to be a little bit of a switch round if he's not able to make it.
And that's the issue for Altrincham, and that's the issue for, I'd say, at least 70% of the clubs that aren't able to go out and spend a couple $100,000 on Ollie Palmers and the like, and the Rooneys of this world of our division. There are 2 divisions. I know Oliver always likes to say that we're League 3 in the National League, which we are. But with a lot of divisions, you get your top 6 in the Premier League, and then you've probably got about 30 odd teams in the Championship and the Premiership that can all rotate. Not that they'd want to. And it's the same at the National League level as well. You've got 6, 7, 8, 9 clubs that will just spaff money around, quite frankly, in an absolutely ridiculous style. And then the rest of us are all looking around in August and September with the trickle-down economics of the world of football and seeing what loan signings there are. Hence, you're getting kids in from League One, like we did last season, like Altrincham have last in this. And it'll be the same for so many other clubs that we come across the first couple of months of the season going, oh, where did you do your shopping? I did mine at Lincoln. Oh, we did ours at Rochdale. Oh, very nice. And that's literally how the loan market has to work at our level, because there's always a couple of leagues above people having to come back before they go forward. So Altrincham are going to be in a similar position to us, even with their couple of extra years on us in the National League. It's going to be a tight one, but I still think I'm going to be a bit more optimistic than I've been the rest of this podcast and say that we'll actually get a win and possibly even Hayley Gandor getting the winner for us. There you go.
3 points to kick the season off. So, unfortunately for the Stones, you are actually the only one of us 4 who has predicted a win. Me and Nigel obviously both going with the 1-1. Connor's also given a quick prediction. He's gone for 1-1 as well. He thinks that they'll score pretty early on, and then we'll kind of struggle most of the game and nick one towards the end to kind of get us on our way in the National League. I've actually, a little bit of a spoiler for the National League podcast, I've got Altrincham smack bang in the middle of my prediction for the National League. I've got them in 12th, although that might change. I did speak to my friend who is a Halifax fan, and the one person he mentioned from Altrincham is Costello as well, so he's definitely a standout player for them, someone we're going to have to keep our eye on next week. But I think as it goes for this podcast, I think that's pretty much all of it wrapped up. For me, at least, I've got out everything I want to get out in terms of predictions. Hopefully, unless you boys have got anything else to add on the top, I think that's a pretty good place to call it quits. Sean?
One quick point to contradict Mr. Connor's point about Maidstone conceding early on. We only conceded twice in the first 15 minutes of the entirety of last season. So now I've said that will obviously probably...
5 minutes in, 4-0 down.
I'm the one who's put the kibosh on it. And so early on defensively, I think it was 12 out of the 45 we conceded were in the first half an hour. So, I mean, that stat becomes irrelevant because you go, oh, yes, third. That's how that works. But in terms of the first quarter, third of the first half, first sixth of the match, first 15 minutes, hardly anything got through. So if we get through that first 15 minutes, generally it's going to be close. And again, that sounds like common sense, but we've got the fact that there's only 2 conceded in that period shows you. Again, you said I was the stat man at the start. It shows you that we've got that solidity at the back, and if they can continue churning out stats like that for me to salivate over, then we've got a chance of being solid and staying and retaining our position in the National League.
Yeah, 100% agree. And, the kind of early on debate is something that really did bode well for us last season. Fantastic start to many of our games and fantastic endings to many of our games as well. We really did outperform teams in those last 15 to 20 minutes of games. I'm sure you've got another stat for us to kind of rattle off, but I'm sure we'll leave that till the Altrincham game. You can find a way to mention that at the end of the game when we're chasing a goal late on. But I'd just quickly like to thank everybody if you have made it this far in the podcast. As I say, it is the debut for the Off-Air podcast, the debut for all of us as well on any sort of recorded sort of podcast type thing. Obviously, hopefully you are familiar with all of us on Stones Live, and Sean will be there as well with the new boy Paul Pettit on Saturday the 6th of August, 3 p.m. I do believe is the kickoff versus Altrincham. So if you can't make the game, then of course do tune into Stones Live. Myself and Nigel will be commentating games throughout the month of August as well, as will Sean. So hopefully we'll catch you on air, and if not, we'll catch you back here on the next edition of the podcast. So thank you both very much for joining me. Nigel, you of course joining us, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
And Sean as well, of course, taking some time out of your evening after celebrating the Euros win. He's managed to mop up the tears before we went live and join us. So thank you both boys for joining me here on the Off-Air podcast, and of course Connor in spirit as well. Hopefully we'll be able to get him on in a week or two's time for something else we might put together. So again, if you have made it this far, thank you all for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're interested in seeing some more content in the coming weeks and hopefully throughout the season. And of course, do like the video and leave your thoughts in the comment section below. So thank you all again for watching, and we'll catch you next time.